This is the 130th anniversary of the opening of the current States Chamber. So in June 1887 was the first time the States had its own room that was appropriate for use as a legislature, as a parliament. It opened on the 21st of June that year, which was the Golden Jubilee of Queen Victoria, and the States used that occasion to open its chamber, to use its chamber for the first time.
What did they use before then?
So before then they shared facilities with the Royal Court. The States Assembly grew out of the Royal Court and shared membership back in those days. The bailiff was president of both and still is. The jurats were members of both at the time. So the States used courtrooms until the time that it had its own chamber built for it.
And do they only have to sit in there, or can they sit elsewhere as well?
No, so it's not a requirement. The States can choose to meet elsewhere if they so wish. So in recent years, for royal visits, the States has met outside, so in the Royal Square, where we are at the moment, in People's Park. Also in recent years, when there's been a fire alarm in the States building and the States had to evacuate for safety reasons, they actually met in the town hall, and that's always been the case in the centuries. Over the centuries, the Assembly has met elsewhere. It's just this is where it meets most often.
And so they were in the Royal Court before. I imagine it was a fairly straightforward decision to create their own assembly.
You might think so, but it took a little bit of time. So we have records of the States going back almost 500 years, and it was only in 1887 that the chamber was created specifically for use by the States as a parliament. The initial idea for having their own room actually came in at least in the mid-1870s, and whilst plans were developed and there were discussions about where the room should go, it was only 10 years later that the chamber was actually opened and used for the first time. So it took a few years for the idea to gain popular support and for it to be implemented.
Okay, and so there was this big empty room in the middle of the building that hadn't been used for 7 years.
Well, we don't quite know exactly what happened. I mean, the States building that is here today was completed at the end of the 1870s, and the ground floor was certainly being used to house States records. But as I say, it was only in 1887 that the actual chamber itself on the first floor was completed.
Okay.
And so don't quite know what was going on the first floor in the intervening period, but it certainly does seem as though it was being used by the States for States meetings.